Hello there, you're listening to Adventures in Dowsing, podcast number 11 from the British Society of Dowsers. I'm Graham Gardner. We're in a slightly light-hearted mood this episode as I interview author Geoff Holder. And now, I originally met Geoff when he contacted me when he was researching his book, The Guide to Mysterious Glasgow. And he interviewed me for that, and I was able to put him in contact with a lot of other people who could help him with his research. So it seemed only fair that I returned the favour and interviewed him for a podcast. I managed to catch up with Geoff at a top-secret location somewhere in Cardiff, and this music might give you a little bit of a clue. Okay, well, we're coming to you today from the luxurious surroundings of Cardiff's Millennium Centre, a wonderful piece of architecture located in Cardiff Bay. It'll be familiar to fans of Doctor Who as the secret base of Torchwood. There's no particular reason for us doing the podcast from here. It's just that the paths of my guest and me happen to have intersected here at this point in space-time. But in a way it's quite appropriate that we are coming from Torchwood, as my guest is researcher and author Geoff Holder, chronicler of the strange, the unusual, the Fortean, the mysterious, the paranormal, and the downright weird. Geoff is the author of several books: The Guides to Mysterious Perthshire, Mysterious Iona and Staffa, Mysterious Loch Ness and Inverness, Mysterious Arran, and the forthcoming Guides to Mysterious Glasgow, Stirling, Aberdeenshire, Lake District, and Skye and Loch Alsh. Have I missed any out there, Geoff? No,
that's complete. You're also making me sound a lot more interested than I actually am, but we'll run with it.
Well, thanks for spending some time with us. Now, I'm detecting a bit of a theme to the books here. How did you get into researching this sort of stuff?
Well, I've been interested in the subject matter, which you might, for general purposes, call sort of Fortean, strange and peculiar, for a great many years. In fact, since I was about 5, when I got my first book on dinosaurs, that kind of got me into the whole thing: dinosaurs, dragons and mythology. And then a couple of years ago I just started writing books about it, and it's snowballed ever since.
So how do you go about gathering your material?
Well, I'd like to say that I sort of just lounge around in a velvet dressing gown whilst a whole army of serfs do the work for me, but sadly it's not like that at all. I do documentary research, books, newspapers, ephemera, and on the net, and then I physically go out and bump into all the things I'm looking for, and also talk to great many people as well.
And do you go out and take photographs of the sites you're talking about?
That's right. I visit everything that I write about, and I take photographs when I'm there.
Right. So are you planning to continue this series until you've covered the whole of the UK?
Well, I suspect the whole of the UK might be overly ambitious, but Scotland certainly is a possibility. There are, other than the ones you mentioned, there are another 5 books commissioned.
Wow.
So that's very pleasing.
So what areas are you most interested in yourself? I mean, do you have any particular favourites?
I'm particularly fond of megalithic monuments, stone circles, standing stones and such like, as well as areas such as holy wells. And I'm very keen on fairyland, or associations with fairyland, and also sort of more modern elements such as associations with film or television or literature, particularly if they have a sort of horror or science fiction or fantasy nature.
What, you mean like film locations and stuff?
That's the kind of thing, yes.
So, big fan of being in Torchwood then, are
It is most appropriate, yes.
Excellent. Have you had any unusual experiences while you've been researching?
Well, one of the characteristics of the way that I am is that nothing ever happens to me. I've been in places where people have picked up the vibes and felt so ill that they've had to leave. I've been with mediums who've in my presence, have communicated with people from the distant past. I've been with people who've channeled Celtic saints. I've been with people who've seen elves and ghosts, and not a single thing have I ever experienced during that time.
Not a single hair on the back of the neck?
Not a single one. And I spend more time in graveyards, old churches, ruined buildings than probably most people. And I'm afraid I'm just dull and boring in this respect.
Well, I know you're certainly a spectacular failure as one of my dowsing students. One of the handful of people I haven't managed to get.
Do you want to tell that story?
No, you can tell it if you want.
Well, you very kindly took me to a labyrinth at Castlemilk in Glasgow, which you'd previously dowsed. And on the way there, I did tell you that I was hopeless at dowsing, and you poo-pooed me. You said, no, everyone can dowse. And I said, no, that's not true. Then you tried me out, and how bad was I?
Spectacularly bad.
Indeed so.
Rods didn't move an inch.
No.
Now, you mentioned holy wells earlier, and I know you've just recently given a talk to the West of Scotland Dowsers about them, which I was absolutely gutted that I couldn't be there. So what's the fascination with wells?
I think there's two things. One, that I have one of the general things that I'm really interested in is when you're dealing with the mysterious, the strange, the peculiar, is what physical remains can you actually go and see, can you touch, can you, in the case of holy wells, can you even taste. Most cases with the mystical, it leaves no trace elements, but holy wells, you can, when you're there, you're at a site where people have been engaging in some kind of ritual behaviour for centuries, if not millennia. And that's a very special thing. And you can go to the well and you can sort of experience, to an extent, what they experienced, walk in their footsteps. And also, wells are a portal. You can use holy wells to look at things such as communication with the gods, particularly in a sort of pre-Christian context. Early Christianity, Dark Age saints, medieval pilgrimages, miracles, healing, post-Reformation suppression, the attack of the state on popular culture, landscaping, follies, and modern veneration by pagans as well. So one humble holy well can, in a way, act as a window into all of those things.
So in a way, they're a kind of psychogeographical map.
Indeed so, yes. That's very true.
Yeah. I'm particularly interested in them myself, actually. I always try and go and visit one if I know where there is one. I had an interesting experience in Lewis a couple of years ago with Jill Smith, where we went to Brideswell, which she discovered, which is... I can't remember the name of the village now, but it's very neglected, and every time she's there she goes and cleans it out, and we went and did that in this little culvert that you clear out and the water starts flowing, sparkling, and it was an absolutely lovely experience. And it's a shame in a way that they aren't venerated as much in Scotland as they used to be. Indeed
so. Often when I'm going in search of holy wells, it can be a very frustrating experience, because I'll have some notes that I've researched. I'll have a location on a map. Sometimes it's a very putative location, and sometimes I can search for ages. Ask the people who live nearby. In many cases, they have no idea. Even older people have no idea where it is. This is a common experience. And occasionally, I'll blunder, actually by accident, on the well, and it'll be either silted up or covered with mossed up, or it'll have a sort of modern offerings such as Coke cans and crisp packets and other rubbish like that, just choking it up. Yeah, we don't seem to have the tradition of well dressing ceremonies that are still quite popular down in England. But Derbyshire is the centre of well dressing. It's still a very popular and continued ritual that takes place in a great many locations in Derbyshire, also parts of Yorkshire as well, and I think Staffordshire, indeed. And some places, such as there are a few wells in the north and west of Wales, which are still venerated. Cumbria, where I've just been recently, I've been researching the Guide to the Mysterious Lake District. That's particularly interesting because a lot of wells there were restored in the year 2000. Communities got grants to restore them. So now is actually a good time to go and see holy wells, much better than it was a decade ago, because many of them are actually now visitable.
Well, I mean, certainly Malvern, where the BSD offices are located, still has an annual well dressing ceremony.
Excellent.
And they have a great number of wells in the hills there. I tend to think that it probably dates back to the sort of Celtic times. Would that be correct?
The problem with trying to investigate the history of holy wells is that for the vast majority of holy wells, for the vast majority of lives, we know absolutely nothing. The surmise, and it is only a surmise, is that most of them were venerated in pre-Christian times, by people who believed that the well had a genius loci, a deus loci, a spirit of the place, and that most of them were then Christianized during the Dark Ages, either directly by one of the saints or the holy men of the period, or by association with them. However, that's only a surmise. In most cases, we don't have any evidence for this whatsoever. And my suspicion is that in many cases, it's actually the reverse. Rather than the well being holy because it's blessed by a saint, the well's holy because an early church was established there, and the church, in one of the key sacraments of a church, particularly in where your locals are not Christian, is baptism. And so what you need is a good source of clean water for baptism. And I think what happened in many cases is that the well became holy by association with the church, as distinct from already being venerated. On the other hand, I could be completely wrong, because in most cases we really don't know.
Well, no, I mean, I know a couple of instances where the water from the well has been channeled through the church at the back of the altar, presumably for such use.
Indeed, so there used to be a church, sadly no longer with us, in the Lake District, where the water from the stream, which was dedicated to St. John the Baptist, actually came through the nave. It came right through the nave, and people had to put wooden boards over it so they didn't get their feet wet during divine service. And there are Cumbria in particular is very interesting because it has a lot of very early establishments of churches, some of them going back to the 6th century, and many of them have been found to actually be on the site of wells.
And Salisbury Cathedral, I think, has a stream running down the middle.
That's correct, yes. That's right. There were a number of examples of this all the way through the UK.
Yeah. I was quite interested in the ones in the Western Isles, because they all seem to have a tradition of healing associated with them, for various ailments.
Certainly in Scotland, you find most wells that have some veneration attached to them. The reason that the veneration is there is for healing. And we find time and time again, after the Reformation has taken place and pilgrimages to wells were banned, we find in the parish records people being prosecuted for going on wells, and when they are asked why they did it, it's for healing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess often there wasn't any other particular cure for anything. So
Well,
whether it's an act of faith or whatever, it seems to work.
Indeed not. What you have to imagine is that in 1516, when the Reformation takes place in Scotland, it's like you are now banned from going to the NHS. That you can't go to the doctor, you can't go to the hospital, and so people resisted that. Not surprisingly, because it was probably the only sort of health service that they knew.
Do you think there's any association, going way back again to the sort of Celtic mindset, of them being a portal to the underworld?
There are a number of examples in archaeological contexts from the south of England showing that wells and places where there was a habitation such as a fort were clearly regarded as being potent in some way, because many of them have offerings, major offerings in them, and others were closed off. They were ritually closed off when the place was abandoned. In places such as Perthshire, within the network of rivers and bogs associated with the River Tay, there's been a very rich source of materials taken that were deposited during the Iron Age, including in one case a bronze cauldron, which is so huge that it must have been the equivalent of sacrificing a BMW. They're very high status objects, and they were deposited in watery environments, obviously as a way of communicating with the gods.
Yeah, fascinating. Now, stone circles is your other passion. This is also a bit of a passion I share, I think. So I believe you're producing a book on Aberdeenshire stone circles?
Well, no. The book I'm writing at the moment is called 101 Things to Do with a Stone Circle.
Oh, right, yes.
And it's a bit different to most stone circle books, in is that it's not about archaeology, it's about history.
Right.
So it's what people have thought about and done with stone circles and standing stones over the past 600 or 700 years. So that ranges from everything from using them as places for for punishment and justice, to fertility rituals, to garden features, and use in things like rock festivals and Spinal Tap and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. Aberdeenshire is quite a favourite area of mine, because there are more stone circles there than anywhere else in the UK.
That's right, and they have a particular style to them as well. There's a regional vernacular architecture of stone circles in Aberdeenshire, and the next book I'm doing is The Guide to Mysterious Aberdeenshire, so I'll be concentrating on those stone circles then.
Why do you think there are so many up there?
You're asking the wrong person, I suspect.
It's a question I constantly ask, as you know.
It will be something to do with obviously with the culture of the people there, but also to an extent, there's so many there because they've survived. So many stone circles and other megalithic monuments have been destroyed by agriculture or urban development. For some reason, a great many have survived in Aberdeenshire, and in some cases, I don't know whether you know the one at Midmar, but the stone circle there is in the middle of the churchyard, and in many other locations they would have destroyed the stones, but here they've preserved them.
But this is quite a tradition of building a church and taking over the ancient site. Actually, we had quite a good dowsing find at Knowlton Church in Dorset, where one of our archaeology groups actually located a buried megalith that was still in the circle. But I mean, the church is right in the middle of the circle there.
There's another example in Dunino in Fife, where the stone circle was on the site. It was smashed up, but you can still locate the stones in the churchyard wall and in the porch of the church itself, and each of them has been actually marked with a cross.
Well, Geoff, thanks very much for talking to us. That's been great.
Thank you very much for inviting me along here. It's a pleasant coincidence that we both happen to be in Cardiff at the same time when neither of us live here.
Yes, I should point out that we're both actually resident in Scotland normally, so it's completely coincidence that we're here at Torchwood. Right.
I had a little push for time during that interview, and I didn't think I'd gotten the best out of Geoff. I think he was a little intimidated by being in Torchwood. Actually, truth be told, I think we both were. So, a couple of weeks later, I went along to the launch of his book, The Guide to Mysterious Glasgow, to see what he had to say.